So I did as much research as I could about grief, not only finding the obvious, like the 5 stages of grief, and knowing things like there's shock and there's anger, but I wanted to know why so many people and relationships come apart. And I found something that it's not often talked about, but when we grieve, our body goes into shock, more specifically our brains. And it all deals with neurotransmitters and things happening within our brain. When we love someone, it is almost like, for lack of a better term, a chemical addiction that we have to the person with the neurotransmitters happening in our brain. When that person is no longer there, we go through shock, and there actually is a withdrawal period, and it hurts, just like someone who's coming off of, alcohol or drug dependency. We call it grief. So there's no just turning off grief because you don't feel like it. I mean, whether somebody loses a job, loses a relationship, someone dies, we're going to be grieving. And so one thing that's very important with grief is we lose a lot of the neurotransmitter called serotonin. And a lot of people have heard of that. That's our feel-good neurotransmitter. When we have enough of that, life is good, we're happy. It goes from, say, 100% down to about 10% while we're grieving. There are some big cases of, there's some people when they grieve, major suicidal thoughts, major, I call it the garbage truck. It's negative thinking nonstop. And that's even a lower amount of serotonin being produced in our bodies. I mean, grief is not something to be taken lightly. A lot of times, if someone feels that they have really heavy grief, see your doctor, and there's medications and things. Yeah, serotonin controls our memory, our perception, our mood, our communication centers in our brain. And why this is important is, for instance, I had a conversation with my sister, and I tell you, I thought she was out to get me because it was before Dad died, and we were talking about his care. And I said, well, this is what he told me. I said, this, and this. She says, let me get this right. So you're saying this, and this. And I said, no, that's not even close to what I said. And we went back and forth maybe 3 or 4 times. I clearly remember it. I was in the Atlanta airport. I was sitting there talking to her, and I said, no, this, and this. And finally, she says, okay, you said this. Correct. Now, I knew full well she was going to go back and tell my brother and sister my words, so I wanted to make sure it was correct. Unfortunately, the story that she gave my brother and sister was her original version. Now, at that time, yeah, I thought she was out to get me. I thought there was a big, something against Sandra, and why would she do that to me? Well, here's what I want to tell you. Why this is important is this happens in a ton of families. Like I said, almost 50% of siblings come apart when a parent dies. What happens is our brain cannot remember what's actually happening. Now, we're living in our own brain, so we think we're normal, but we may not be. So I believe my sister, to the best of her abilities, was repeating what she thought I said. And I also have no guarantees that my own brain remembered things that she said just the way she did. So this is important. And I thought, you know what? If people knew that this is a side effect coming from grief, and people knew it before they lost someone, that maybe they could work through a death or a loss together, knowing their memories are going to stink, and knowing that they're probably going to want to fight, and to have more compassion.